Hi, everybody, and welcome to the inaugural edition of the Soul Booth Book Club. You do not know how excited I am about this and to have these three fabulous beings in the booth. This is the book, which I've described in the intro, the Book of Joy, and I love the fact that it starts with a line, every day is a new opportunity to begin again, every day is your birthday. Well, today actually is my birthday,
Yes.
and the day we're taping this, not the day you're necessarily watching it. And this book is about the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu meeting over the course of a week at the time of the Dalai Lama's birthday, 80th birthday. And I have asked these three fabulous friends of mine who are interesting thinkers and fabulous all-around human beings to just talk about it with me. So Anne Berube has been in the booth before. She is the author of Be, Feel, Think, Do. And I will put each of their links in the description as well for this video so you can explore and find out all sorts of different things about them. David McGinley has been in the booth before. He is the author of Beyond Surviving, which is an amazing book. And he's also a hospital chaplain and a Lutheran minister. Who knows where this conversation could go today? Renee Hartlieb is a first-timer in here, but I've been meaning to get her in the booth for a while. Renee is a writing mentor, and she has an amazing project called the 40-Day Writing Project. Project? Yeah. I've done it. I should know. And I loved it. And anyway, it was transformative for me because it got me writing again. And so thank you for that. And thank you, all of you, for being here today.
Oh, pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Happy birthday.
Yes.
Thank you. This was my best, honestly, this was the thing I thought, what would I love to do on my birthday? I know exactly when I want to launch that Soul Booth Book Club. This is my best gift. So really, I appreciate you being here. And I want to know what you thought of the book.
Oh.
Yeah.
It was profound and simple.
Yeah.
It was like my grandmother's advice, what she always told me. And yet the situations in which they explored the simple aspects of gratitude, awareness, forgiveness, compassion, on and on and on, were staggering. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to read this book and say, yeah, I agree with this and it makes sense. But to practice it in those situations, in apartheid and in the expulsion of the Chinese coming in Tibet and losing your country, I have a hard enough time practicing these qualities at home with my family.
Oh, but that is the toughest crucible sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah. That's the laboratory, right? Where we learn to love.
Yeah.
Oh, this book was meaty, really good.
And you know what I loved is that it wasn't just theory. It gave practical exercises at the end that you can actually do and incorporate into your life, which a lot of books don't do. So I feel like that is really important and makes this book super special.
It didn't just leave you hanging at the end.
Well, yeah, because you often think, how do I, now what do I do?
Yeah.
You know, but there's actual joy practices.
I found that it made me feel warm inside the whole time I was reading it. And I had a smile on my face the whole time because they're always laughing. They're always like kidding with each other and joking around, and they have such an amazing relationship and you can feel it.
Yes.
That I had this big smile, and just knowing that smiling like helps your health and makes you feel much better, like they talk about in the book. That's what it did for me. I felt like I was right there with them. I loved it.
It's like it's full of joy, isn't it? It's really, I found the same thing. I was really, I was shocked by the playful nature of their relationship and how much humor they both have and how much they both really, they just love the fact that they can be so comfortable with their friend. They have this friendship. And they probably are both, they're both, of course, the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. I haven't really talked about what the book is, but they are both spiritual leaders of great renown. They've both been through great hardship. They've both been, fighting an amazing nonviolent fight throughout their lives against oppression. And they are both full of joy.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that I felt joyful when I was experiencing this relationship between them. And I thought that was interesting.
I also felt like we were witnessing something unique and that will never happen again, and
Yes.
maybe hasn't happened in that way as well. I felt like it was so sacred and really special that the author brought them together. That probably hasn't happened in that way and won't happen again. So, and you could tell they were grateful to have had that opportunity to be together like that,
Yeah.
like two old friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you felt that at the end of the book as they parted ways, they knew they probably wouldn't see each other again.
Yes.
It was so tender.
That was really
It was
moving.
it was just filled your soul
Yeah.
with gratitude and appreciation and admiration for this friendship.
Yeah.
And
And for both of them.
For both
Didn't
of
you
them.
find
Yeah.
when I was listening to it,
Same
who
here.
listened and who read it?
I listened.
I listened.
Yeah, so the three
read.
of us read. The
writer
three of
read,
us
of
listened
course.
and the writer read.
Surprise!
Yeah, and then of course I looked through it afterwards. In the past couple of days, I bought a solid copy for myself and also looked through it.
Yeah.
But I found that listening to it and hearing that segment where they are talking about the fact that they probably won't see one another again because the Archbishop had very poor health and he's getting very aged and so on. And their lives just don't give them a lot of opportunity to get together and hang out and have a beer. But I was so grateful for them, for their presence in the world and what they brought to the world.
Yeah.
I was reminded of the very basic paradox that gratitude is not a response to a good situation. Gratitude is where it starts, and it's not defined by the circumstances. And it is more powerful than hate. It is more powerful than pride and envy and sadness. Smiling, right? They blended the science, showing how that affects your endocrine system and fires the wiring in your brain and it expands your consciousness, and the spiritual ancient teachings and their conclusion that gratitude is possible and joy is possible in any situation, and that here's the leader of the Buddhist community, a leader in the major Christian Anglican, right? And they both agree the only true religion is love.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's what this book helps you practice, despite any circumstance you may be in.
Yeah.
That can be hard to comprehend when you are down and when you are righteously angry and when you have been injured terribly. And yet, when you read what they did, what they went through and how they applied this, how could you doubt, right? And it's so sincere in their character. Wow, they took me to school.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I learned a
And you
lot.
said the simplicity of it earlier, and there's some repetition, right? Like it always comes back to compassion. It always comes back to that connection in love and that connection in gratitude. So simple, but that repetition was really useful because it reminded me that no, it's that simple. It is. Don't get lost in all these different paradigms and all these different teachings. Really, at the end of the day, it's that simple. And I think when you hear it over and over in different contexts, it really comes home and you can really apply it. Because there's definitely a level of compassion that I did not understand, and now I do because of that book.
That idea of loving your enemy or your oppressor as being as important as loving people who are close to you in your life. I thought that was really powerful.
Yeah.
And David, that won't surprise you, that
No,
thought provoke.
because you're loving your enemy and your oppressor as yourself, because they are yourself. We all emanate from that one consciousness. We all are brothers and sisters. It's just when I honor the light in you, even when you don't honor it in yourself and you oppress me, I ennoble you as well as myself. And so they drilled again and again into the wisdom of compassion as solidarity with the suffering, and how this lifts you up and empowers you even as you suffer. This is redemptive suffering in the Christian tradition. In the Buddhist tradition, Tonglen is the meditation that they'd apply. I take in your pain, I send back my compassion. Oh,
I love that.
love that.
I love that. Like a mutual friend of ours, I'm not going to say her name, but when her brother was passing away, that's the practice that she did. She took his pain and then just would send him the light. And she said it just, the nurses would actually notice that he was doing much better on those days when she was visiting and practicing that practice with him. So it's, it's very powerful.
Yeah.
So powerful. And it's not like you take in and you carry their burden. It's not like that. It just, there's a metamorphosis of that energy that goes back out into light. You don't hold it and you're not weighed by it. You just shine it right back, but in this light of love and compassion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Well, and the whole power of forgiveness too, right? And how we don't realize that when we're not forgiving, we're actually keeping ourselves in bondage to the person who may have hurt us. I found that really powerful.
Yeah, there they talked about the pain of 2 arrows, right? The original injury,
Yeah.
and then you replay it in your mind and in your heart. So you pick up the arrow and you keep doing it.
Exactly.
Yourself,
Exactly.
yeah.
And I think anyone who reads that goes, yeah, that resonates. Like, I've totally done that before.
Yeah.
And there are things, you can think, yes, I do that in this circumstance.
Yeah.
And it may be very justified, but do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Well, and the writer was I thought it was amazing how he brought in stories of other people, like lay people, not just the stories of these spiritual leaders, but someone who had been imprisoned for 30 years unjustly, and how he forgave and how he found joy even in
Solitary
prison.
confinement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On death row, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that
Yes.
was
Yeah.
powerful. Very powerful.
I
But
had a
you-
note on that. I know. I got excited when you said that, because I know I wrote a note about something that he said, that prisoner had said, that was really moving. Go ahead with your thought. I'm going to find it.
No, that was one of those powerful stories in the book that really got to me, and it reminded me of what from the book of Viktor Frankl.
Oh, yeah. Man's Search for Meaning.
Yes, and in that ultimate, that last choice that you have is how you feel inside and how how you decide to react, no matter how much all the freedoms outside are taken away from you.
Yes.
And he was, he found freedom. He wasn't executed, he was released, and he had $3 or something in his pocket, and he was traveling in a car, and he was asked, how can you not be angry at these people? And he said, well, they took 30 years of my life, they're not going to take these years.
Yeah.
They can't take my joy. I own my joy. It comes from me, from mine to give away, right? And oh my goodness.
And that I find was one of the most inspiring messages in the book, is that joy is not only our birthright, but it's a daily choice. So we get to choose to feel joy or not.
In any circumstance.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the quote that I was thinking of, where he talked about how my joy is my own, and I can choose it. I can draw it up from inside, and I can own it, and no one can take it away from me unless I allow them to.
Right. It's not contingent upon any external circumstances. That's really that's different for a lot of people to hear, I think, especially in our culture.
It's transformative.
Where we equate our self-worth with what we own and what we do, what we wear, right?
Yeah, and then we're caught up in the pursuit of happiness. And as long as we're pursuing happiness, it's never going to come. It's never going to be sourced from inside. That car, that house, that shirt, though I did pick up a very nice one at a good price, and I'm quite happy for it.
Is it that purple one?
No, it's a different one. But if we're setting out to be joyful, we're always going to be chasing it. But if we stop and manifest the joy now, independent of circumstance, things ripple out, things flow. You see the world as you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just waking up in the morning and, as soon as we know that we're awake,
Yeah.
just this gratitude for, wow, I'm alive. I'm alive. I'm in this body and I have another day ahead. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It changes the energy of the day.
So they named a few factors that were surprisingly independent of each other in maintaining that existential equilibrium, right? And they said 4 circuits of equanimity: your ability to recover, to maintain your positive state, to recover from your negative state, the ability to focus your energy, your capacity for generosity. And these are independent of each other. Some of us are good at one and not that good at the other. But when you are able to work with all of those subtle nuances of being, then life feels different. Joy starts to bubble up. I appreciated how they emphasized this is a practice.
Yes.
You're not going to
Yeah.
be good at it. You're going to be off
Hallelujah.
some days.
Yeah.
And suffering is required.
Yes.
Yeah,
I love that.
I did.
Oh.
that too.
Okay, we all had that reaction.
Need to talk about that.
Yeah, we need to talk about that. Okay, so we're going to go to suffering next, but I'm curious, did you like the structure of the book?
Very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's storytelling.
You as the writer?
Yes, I was very admiring of what he did, because he not only distilled the wisdom of those 5 days with these 2 amazing people, but he incorporated the science of joy, and then, as I was saying earlier, those other people's stories. And he also did this amazing thing where he would often, he would condense or summarize these big concepts into like 2 or 3 super inspiring, powerful sentences. And I was like, how did he do that?
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like creating a really potent sauce. He's boiled it down and there it is.
Yeah.
I love that. I loved the obstacles to joy. I loved the science. I also loved the pillars of joy.
Yes. Yeah.
But let's talk about the obstacles. And suffering is a weird one because it's an obstacle and a conduit to joy.
Yeah.
So go.
Well, the Archbishop says that everything beautiful comes from suffering. And it's so true. It's so true. Like, if you look into your own life, you can see that the revelations, the insights, the freedom that you find, it comes from the dark night of the soul. It comes from spending time confused and in the dark or in pain, sick, or in a difficult relationship. But out of that comes the joy and comes the beautiful realization and the freedom. I loved that, because if we were always like this, we wouldn't experience that freedom and that love and that joy.
And it's a different kind of message, because we're really taught to avoid pain at all costs and cover it up and deny it. And so it was that was really enlightening for me.
Medicate it.
Yeah.
What do you have in there?
Sorry, it's just water. It's just sparkling water.
I was very excited about that section because, of course, I work in suffering.
Yes.
Cancer care, palliative care, intensive care. And it is such a profoundly beautiful place where I witness breathtaking love, deep humanity, the wrestling with physical pain, the groping for wisdom. And I witness it in the staff and in the patients. And I see this transformative power that suffering has upon people, but I really feel incapable of seeing that when it's happening within ourselves. Because you can't have an objective perspective upon your own experience. It's just not the way consciousness is. It's always subjective. So you must become lost in this in order to grow through this. And another key point is, while suffering is not the catalyst, it's the fuel for deeper gratitude and deeper joy, that doesn't mean you stay in suffering. That doesn't mean you leave it or don't address it. It was precisely their wisdom of suffering that enabled them to be such prophets and advocates and social activists and fight against it with the sword of love. Yeah.
Sword of love, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I loved the part about where you find perspective in the suffering. So it's not suffering for no reason. It's like you find out, like you look at the bigger picture.
And you
for
find
the-
Into the
empathy.
meaning.
Finding
Yes.
empathy as well,
Yeah.
because once you've suffered, you know, I liked how they
Yes.
addressed that
Yeah.
once you have experienced suffering, you understand that other people go through this as well
Yeah.
in their own ways, and you have compassion for them in their suffering.
Yes.
Adversity introduces a person to themselves,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, I like that.
Viktor Frankl. And
I thought it was you.
hardly. I ain't that smart.
Yeah, I love that.
But yeah, it's so for anyone listening to this, I mean, we don't know what situation you're in. We don't know what pain you're going through. And these words may be an insult to your experience.
Well, on that topic, there was something that I was really interested in. It kind of popped out of the book more than anything else for me was when the Dalai Lama was surprised to hear that in the West, compassion towards ourselves
Yes.
was not an innate thing, or not an
Yeah.
innate thing, but was not automatic. And he was surprised about that.
I wrote that down too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, as a spiritual coach, I find that in order to be able to feel that compassion towards other people, you first have to understand how to be compassionate to your own suffering in your own heart. And because sometimes when I was listening to the book, I felt, yeah, that's good, but if it comes from a place of mind and it's not from a place of deep compassion for your own heart, then you miss the boat. Like, you're missing the whole point of the compassion. And he was surprised, I think, because in his culture, I don't know, I'm making this up, right? I'm thinking, in his culture, you care about yourself. Like, you care deep inside yourself. You care about you.
You feel your own light.
You do, and you would never do something if you're tired, you sleep.
Yeah.
If you're hungry, you eat.
And you're respectful of your own process.
Yes, exactly. And you ask
right?
for what you need, and it's actually kind of, you know, natural and normal. But here we've forgotten how to take care of
Totally.
ourselves completely. So I thought that was really interesting, because I would think that would be a great next book.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Because he was almost confused. He was
Yeah.
surprised and
Yes.
almost confused.
how can
And
you love
astonished.
anyone else if you don't love yourself?
Yeah.
Exactly the
Yeah.
point.
Ask the average person on the street, just stop them and say, do you completely love and accept yourself? Oh,
Yeah.
they're going to scoff. They're going to,
Yeah.
Who are you?
Yeah.
Who's this crazy guy?
yeah, they
Yeah.
do that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, no, it's an uncomfortable thing for people to be asked, I think.
Yeah.
Do you love yourself? I think a lot of people have a very awkward reaction to
Yeah.
that.
It's still
question.
equated with boastfulness, I think, here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And vanity,
Yeah.
ego, maybe even, you know.
I found it such a relief to read that in the book, that the Dalai Lama,
Yeah.
considers that to be just sacred and so important and integral to, like Buddhist philosophy, and it just felt good to think, okay, we're on the right
We're
track
on the
here.
right track.
Those of us
Yeah.
who are teaching self-love,
Exactly.
right?
We're just so far away, I guess, here from that innate, natural way of being with ourselves.
That's the way the industry runs, right? Because if you completely love and accept yourself, you don't need to fill that void with
Right.
Yeah.
shopping and the possessions and
Yeah.
reaching
That
for
new
those-
shirt.
Well, come on.
No, you gotta have a new shirt. That's celestial luxury.
It is.
Right.
It is.
Anne's phrase, I love that.
But they talked about how cruelty disfigures our humanity.
Yeah.
And yet within ourselves is that critical voice that never ends.
Yes.
We beat ourselves up and we don't measure up and we compare ourselves. And I looked at their lightheartedness about
Yes.
having a sense of humor was one of the pillars. There are
Yeah.
8 pillars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's having a sense of humor about yourself. I love that.
And to each other too, like they
Yeah.
would tease each other so
Tease
much.
each other.
It was so refreshing and
Yeah.
beautiful.
They play like children.
They do.
And that takes me to the idea, which I am struck by all the time watching small children.
Yeah.
Young children are so in touch with their joy. You watch toddlers, and they are just naturally, innately joyful, unless they're not. And if something's bothering them, there might be an obstacle to their joy. But overall, they are so free in their play, and they'll twirl around.
Yeah.
They don't worry about who's watching them and who's judging them, and they don't worry about having to say the right thing.
Yeah.
Why do we migrate away from that? So we are, I think, like the Dalai Lama when we start out in this adventure of life, but boy, do we walk a long way from it.
Do we really believe that humanity is at its core good, that we are essentially good? To hear the Bishop Tutu state that, I loved it because it was a slap in the face of original sin.
Yeah.
The guilt and the right, the depravity of humanity that is
We're born flawed.
right, that is drilled
Sinners.
every Sunday
Yeah.
in millions of churches
So true.
into us, and but it is contrary to the first, one of the first sentences in the Bible. It's good. God creates it and says, "Oh, I like this stuff. This is good. He's good. She's good." Right?
Yes,
Right.
that's great.
And
This is why we call him a minister with a difference.
yeah,
Love it.
that sense, and that word though, sin, it's got this heavy weight to it, and we forget that the word simply means separate. That's all it means.
Separating yourself from God.
A
you mean?
separation. When you feel that you're separate from another person, let alone from God, you're living in a state of sin, a state of separation. And joy and love is the remembering that is an illusion, that I am entwined with you, that we are one. So forgiveness becomes an act of remembering, and it sets you free. These guys got it. Their freedom is bubbling up. They are brothers, and they see their enemies as their brothers and their sisters. And good theology, right? Right to the bone. It's beautiful stuff.
I love what they say about humility and what they live about humility as well.
Yes.
And humility is one of the pillars of joy,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And you see it in them, like I forget if it was the Dalai Lama or Archbishop Desmond Tutu who said, I don't like going to a gathering where people take themselves so seriously. They'll meet with other leaders and they'll find that these world leaders, are so serious and just
To be on a pedestal.
Yeah.
On this
That
tall
yes,
story was
literally, and that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I loved that they both have this sense of themselves as just being servants or instruments of love and peace, and that's their meaning in the world.
That was helpful for me because going on stage, I used to be very nervous, and you've coached me really well through that. And one of the things that has helped me in the past, and I was building on that with the book, was to just love them, just be there and love them. And then when I read that, I was like, it's more than that. It's really just remember, you're them. We are the same. And it's true. It's when we share our real stories of suffering, when we share our own story in humility and vulnerability, that people put their guards down and they can take a breath and like, okay, we're all,
like,
we're
oh,
all
you're
in this
real.
together. We're all in this together. So it's really not about teaching. It's about being together and sharing. Yeah.
What is the difference between joy and happiness for you?
Well, the book, I mean, the way he introduced it, I saw it the opposite, right? So, because I lead a workshop called the Happy Sessions. So to me, happiness, because the Dalai Lama does talk about the happiness, like it's an important topic for him. So they were making the distinction between the two. But I understand what they mean, like that joy is that deeper sense of peace and inner freedom and connection to self and being content and in being able to express that compassion and gratitude. And happiness is more externally referenced. That's what they were mentioning. But I kind of see them as both the same. Both the same. It's a similar experience for me. That's how I use the word happy and joy, kind of interchangeably.
What about you, Renee?
Well, I kind of agree. It's a little bit of semantics, I think, but I liked their distinction between joy and happiness because the way that they talked about it was that happiness is related to things that are external to you, and joy is that innate sense that we all have. We just need to access it more. It's there, right? It's just that we're not practicing being that because all of these other things get in the way.
We're doing too much and not being. Be, feel, think, do.
Oh, and I loved when he talked about the doing. I'm not sure which one it was, but I think it was the Dalai Lama talked about how in the West we have like too much ambition and too many like to-do lists, basically goals, and that the only thing that matters is love and connection, and not all of these things that we aspire to. And when we take those off of our list, it's much more simple, back to the simple theme. Yeah.
I was struck by that distinction of happiness and joy. I've experienced happiness as more determined by circumstances and events that have happened, and I've had, happiness bubbling in me. But joy, C.S. Lewis talks about being apprehended by joy. Joy is something massively bigger, something that unfolds and consumes me like a lover or a good steak, right? The other way.
Sorry for those vegans out there.
Right. Joy is this entire state of being that I've found myself occasionally manifesting, and it's.
It can only be occasional.
It can only be
right?
occasional. How you can't maintain that all the time.
It visits you.
It visits you.
Kind of catches you a bit by surprise.
And the big surprise that's waiting for all of us is we will discover it is the underlying nature of all of reality.
Yeah.
And we're floating in it all the moment. And it's bigger than emotion. It's an entire state of being. And I think fundamentally, right? I mean, in the Christian tradition, joy is always connected to praise, right? To rapture, to these sensual
like
words.
ecstasy.
Right?
Yeah.
It's an entire body thing. It's not just, I'm happy. Right?
Yeah.
It's emerging. It's a merging
Yeah.
into the whole almost, and experiencing the greater than myself. Yeah.
And it's celebration, right?
Yeah.
These guys, they're constantly celebrating, even in their tears.
I know.
And
It's
in their
amazing.
sorrow.
And being so grateful. I love that
So
the
grateful.
acknowledgments in the book were 3 pages long. So beautiful.
And I think
Yeah.
Well, gratitude, I love that. Gratitude is such an important pillar
Yes.
in their list of pillars of joy.
Yeah.
We should name that list. I
Go
I
for
happened
it.
to write them down.
Look, you've
because-
got your.
Good
This
for
is
you.
the difference. This is my
No.
disorganized
I'm
list. I went
empty-handed.
searching through.
I appreciate it. Perspective was the first pillar, and it always starts with your perspective. So no wonder, right? And they talk about for every event in life there are many different angles. So that's the first thing, and then humility, to realize my view is not the only view, right? And I should get over myself. I'm not superior. And then came humor. I gotta have a sense of humor about myself because I'm ridiculously hilarious. It's just
Yes, but
Not in a
that
funny
is.
way, but-
I loved that humor was in that list of
Yes.
pillars.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really. I mean, it means a lot in my life. But I
Yes.
do think that if we move through life without humor,
Yeah.
we are missing a big part of the point.
and from humor comes, of course, acceptance.
Yeah.
Of me and my funny ways and you and your lovely ways and all of us in our broken ways. So acceptance follows after that, and with it then awakens forgiveness. Right? Oh, because when I accept you, I see you acting out of your pain, and I can forgive that despite your behavior, and through that love I can awaken you or help you. And then comes gratitude, right? And then comes compassion, because all of this breaks you up into the suffering of the world, the suffering of everyone. And that is a beautiful brokenness to live by. That's incredible. And then generosity, because you are rich and full and you have everything you need and just flowing from you. I think that was 8.
That was 8.
Yeah.
But you
Wow.
see the
A
flow.
beautiful
Yeah.
brokenness. That was nice how you said that.
Beautiful brokenness resonated for me too. And the generosity piece meant a lot to me. In fact, I loved the idea that the only way money can ever give us happiness, they say money can't buy happiness. The only way money can buy happiness is if you give it
Yes.
away.
Yes, that was big.
I loved that because by helping someone else with that money, it gives you joy.
Yes.
And that was powerful to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And sometimes that money is getting in the way of the love.
Yes, yes.
And
Yeah, I loved the message that when we are helping others, we are actually helping ourselves. And
it
I
was over and over again.
yes, and I think that is often missed here. We don't really realize that.
Yeah. Yeah, that is something we could all, I mean, it's funny, I feel like we could all just sit for a moment and really think about that. But
Yeah.
that is, and that's true of a few things in the book,
Yeah.
that you read them and you go, oh, I need to sit with that.
Yes.
I need
Yeah.
to just think about that. I want to take a pause and just be with that and see what it brings up for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, that is, I think that's a very powerful truth. And if more of us were to focus on the truth in it,
Yeah.
that it would, I think these guys could, if they had control of the world, really change the world.
well, I'm
Yes.
glad that you got us to read this book at this point in the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
With the energy going on in the world, this is desperately needed.
It is.
Yeah.
Because right now, anger is being met with anger, violence with violence, pain with pain.
Yeah.
And it's all getting crazy.
Let's talk about anger, because the anger, and this is taking us back into the obstacles to joy. But I loved what they talked about in terms of anger being a secondary emotion. Who wants to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I heard that a long time ago that anger is just the manifestation of something deeper. And at the core of it is hurt. So it's secondary, complementary, I guess, emotion. And so if we can just sit with the anger and notice it and maybe even express it, but without hurting someone else,
Yeah.
right? Access the hurt. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're getting to the root of, but often we just, grab a glass of wine or we'll watch Netflix and we just don't really sit with it. It's too uncomfortable. We don't love that. We don't love to fully feel
And we keep that anger in our body.
That's right.
frustration and impatience and annoyance and
And I think the vulnerability of feeling hurt is what causes us to have that anger reaction, because it's really, really uncomfortable to be hurt or to feel wounded or vulnerable,
yes.
right? It's easy to do the knee-jerk, I'm angry.
Yeah. And I'll be justified and validated in my anger if only someone can take the blame or reflect that to me now.
I did appreciate that they gave sort of permission to be angry. Anger is very appropriate in many situations.
Yeah.
But
Righteous anger, they talked
righteous
about.
anger, right?
Yeah.
And that's fuel for social transformation.
Yeah.
That's fuel for justice, for stepping out, not letting oppression continue. So it's a powerful and important emotion. But who of us have a good mentor in using anger, right?
Yeah.
It's don't stay in your anger, but it's there, it's wise, it's saying something important. And in some cases that may be it may not feel healthy, because many people get angry because they're losing control, their ego's insulted, right? And it's an exercise of power. Well, is it wise? It's revealing the script that you are living by. That's where its wisdom is. And then to realize it, to feel it in your body, and then to say, now I can observe my anger. I have this emotion. It does not have me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was powerful for them.
I loved when the Dalai Lama talked about the Chinese and how he could choose to feel angry and unforgiving toward them, but chose not to, and knows how much that benefits him to not do that. And the distinction between forgiving and saying that something is bad behavior, do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lesson for us in our everyday lives. Well, there's so many lessons, but I think in the forgiveness, the way they talk about forgiveness and the way they talk about loving and being generous with your forgiveness and love, I guess. I think that we can all go through our daily lives and watch people reacting in anger and watch ourselves reacting in anger and label it. And just say, okay, this is my practice, and I am just seeing what that really is. That's hurt. So instead of reacting in anger to you, because you're mad that we almost wore the same color. No, I really think that's a powerful practice for me, to just say, okay, wait a sec, time out, what is this really? Don't react, don't do a knee-jerk reaction, see the person with compassion and love, and then don't let them disturb your joy too, I guess.
Yeah, am I going to project my pain onto you, or am I going to process my pain?
And own it.
And own it as part of my humanity and part of my story. I don't need to be controlled by everything I feel, and I certainly don't need to believe everything I think. So that's where the sense of humor comes in.
Yes.
Yeah.
We were talking about that back in January, and I think with you as well is this idea that, coming together when we're in pain or we're angry or we're frustrated, if we own what's ours, we're not depleting the other. So the relationships and the friendships, they're feeding, they're bringing more to, to the relationship, as opposed to projecting and blaming and trying to find that validation for the anger and for the resentment. And I think that if we saw friendship like that more, I think we would find that we would grow into that, in that love a lot more.
Because it's about authenticity.
It's about authenticity and having self-responsibility and self-acceptance, but self-responsibility in saying, I have this beautiful relationship with my friend, and she or he wants, to be there for me, and I'm gonna just be grateful for the opportunity to show up and be vulnerable. But I'm going to own what's mine. Like, we're not going to project onto the other person. And then what happens is that the other person is fed by that encounter. And then we all have those different friendships, right? The ones who feed us and the ones who don't. And sometimes we don't understand why. I mean, this is a good person, but why every time I meet with that person I feel drained? And we don't want to let them go either. But I think that's that distinction with owning.
Well, and they talk about the prayerful, I think is the word that they used, or meditative life. And the advantage of that is that there's an opportunity to take a step back rather than reacting out of, those immediate emotions or thoughts that might surface, and being a bit more mindful about our response.
Who of us doesn't have broken relationships in the wake of our journey?
Yes.
Right? I can reflect back on friendships that, I have not been my best self in, relationships where I've projected my pain, and it lies like rubble in the memory. But there's so much still to learn from those.
So do you value those now?
They still...
Or do they hang on you like a weight?
I still feel the weight.
Really?
Right? I honestly, I do.
Yeah.
Because I did not speak or act as wisely as I could. And I learned so much from that. But the task of forgiveness, letting go of that pain, is a daily practice like meditation. And when we go into meditation, my goodness, you're left with the raw material of your own life. Well, I want to go buy another shirt now. It's hard stuff.
Yeah,
Be
exactly.
tender and compassionate with that. So visualize those those friends and send them that love and light, and try to carry on as best you can.
And they do have a whole practice in the back, right? About
It's
forgiving
so
yourself. Super
beautiful.
powerful.
Yeah.
And forgiving yourself and sending yourself love and peace and joy, and
Yeah.
then picturing your closest loved ones and sending it to them and saying the same thing, and then moving it out. You know, that practice of moving it out to those you don't know and everyone in the world eventually, those who have oppressed you, whatever, but then everyone. And you're buying yourself joy
Yeah.
through that practice.
Yeah.
You're sending it to them, but you are
Yes.
really gaining it for yourself.
Yeah.
And they referenced exercise. When you do physical exercise,
Yes.
start with the light weights, increase, you're building the muscle and the strength. With your meditation, your joy practice, start small, be consistent, regular practice.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to carry the heavier loads.
You wrote a great blog about that.
Yeah.
And it was like an aha moment for me, to quote Oprah, in that you said, if we just pick up a weight and hold it, it doesn't do anything for our muscle. Just give us the synopsis, because it was wonderful.
To build the muscle, you pick it up and you hold it, and then you let it down, you repeat. If you just pick it up and hold it, you're going to fatigue the muscle and it ain't going to grow. So you do this repeatedly, small steps, and then walk away from it and nourish the body and give it rest. Same with our spirit, our soul, in meditation. Your mind is going to wander about every 5 seconds. So that's one rep. Off it goes.
Yeah.
And then bring it back with your breath. And then off it goes. And then bring it back with your breath. Success at meditation or prayer requires repeated failure. You cannot maintain it consistently. And yet doing it is going to, as they explored in the science, rewire your brain.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Increase the connection of brain and heart rhythms.
Yeah.
It's going to expand your consciousness.
Yeah.
But it can feel like it takes so long because you don't see the progress from inside.
But
Yes,
don't you think
yes.
we apply this old paradigm to it, and our regular paradigm that we live within in our society, which is, okay, let go of my thoughts. I had a thought. Oh, why did I have a thought?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why? Oh, I'm terrible at this. Damn, another thought. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yes.
really?
Yeah.
And that is, believe me, I speak from experience. I have tried to meditate like that. And the form of meditation you're talking about, where also even just through the day. So just spend a minute. And Wayne Dyer used to say this, if you have time to stop at a red light, you have time to meditate.
Yes.
Yeah.
You could
Yeah.
just at a red light
Oh yeah.
That's
stop and just let your,
Breathe.
yeah.
Yes, yeah. And Deepak would say, he says that meditation is the back and forth between thought and no thought. It's the back and forth. It's not just the no thought.
Right.
Oh, I like
It's the
that.
movement.
Yeah.
I've got
If there's
that.
no movement, that you're not meditating.
Yeah.
You're doing something else.
Yeah.
What's fascinating is the research shows you only need to do this for 10 seconds every hour in order for it to start rewiring your brain for stability and equanimity. And those neurons that are growing are linking your frontal cortex and the human part of the brain with the mammalian and the reptilian part of the brain, so you can regulate those instinctive emotional responses even better. And then when they put monks into CAT scan machines and they measure,
Yes.
Yeah.
they're wired differently than the average Joe.
Yeah.
And even after 1 month of meditation, you
Yes.
can take brain scans before and after and see the difference.
They did a study on college-aged males, exactly that one, and they found even those with distracted minds were rewiring for equanimity.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
the idea of coming home every hour. Every hour, not just once a day, but every time you think about it.
Yeah.
You're at the stoplight, or you're using the washroom, or you have a break for your coffee break.
Yeah.
Just come home, take that deep breath.
Yeah.
Or every time the phone rings, instead of thinking, oh, that darn phone, I don't have time for someone right now, hear the ring and think of it as,
Yes.
okay, let me take a deep breath. Let that be a reminder in my day
Yes.
to take a deep breath,
Yes.
because I haven't.
Yeah.
And that makes me think of what they talked about in the book about intention. and how waking up in the morning and setting an intention for the day and then reviewing that at the end of the day and seeing how you did and not being hard on yourself if you didn't do so well with your intention. Like there was a lot of reminders to be gentle on ourselves in this book.
The Archbishop was talking about that quite a bit, right? Because I think the Dalai Lama was saying that you can avoid those thoughts and you can let them go and for them not to come in. And then the Archbishop would say, no, they'll always be there. They're always going to
they
show
had a
up.
difference of opinion.
Exactly. It's how you react to them and are you gentle. So, when I go on stage, even though now I feel much more comfortable, I still hear the voice that says, you are going to talk to these people? What do you have to say that's interesting?
Oh,
it's
I
still
have that
there.
same voice all the time.
It's still there. And then, so now I'll say, oh, hi.
Hi
It's you again. Oh, thanks for coming.
That's great.
Wouldn't be the same without you.
No, and I'll say,
Yeah.
come with me, but I'm going to lead. So it's almost like it disarms it. Like it says, oh, she's not going to fight me. Okay, I'll come along. And so it's that gentleness towards our own thoughts. I mean, we've all had trauma. Emotional, physical, psychological, sexual, we've all had it. And so we all have those thoughts that are telling us we're less than who we really are. It's, do we believe in them or not?
I love that you mentioned that. Brene Brown says, anxiety, fear, that critical voice, and then she says, this is what you say to them. I hear you, you're with me, I love you, but sit down in the back seat because Mama's driving.
Yeah.
I love that.
It changes everything because it's not about being hard on ourselves that we're again, putting ourselves down. No, it's saying I love you. I am so sorry you're hurt. It's the part of us that was hurt, and so it's trying to protect us from more hurt. So thank you.
But
for
look
doing
at the
that.
remedy that society keeps pushing. Sensory gratification, right? Netflix, right? Because socializing requires pants. Choose Netflix. Or chocolate, right?
Oh my God! For the record, we are all wearing pants.
We're-
I don't know. For me.
It's a whole other soul bit.
There's no shortage of addictions to choose from.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
But
Distractions.
Distractions.
Yeah,
right.
That
Distractions.
can turn into
right.
addictions.
Addictions and distractions.
But they say going to those to soothe your soul is like trying to drink salt water because you're thirsty.
Yes.
Not going to work.
So what I'm hearing, it's, I think there are a lot of people in our world who say, oh, it's those self-help people. They're always looking at their own navel and, give me a break.
Have you seen my navel? Sorry, I don't have a navel.
Seriously?
Seriously. It was removed during the surgery.
I think I'm losing control.
I'm sorry. That's another soul booth, right?
Right.
Yes.
Where's
Four
your-
surgeries? How many surgeries have you had for your cancers?
Four
Four-
surgeries
four
for the
cancers.
cancer. Right, 4
Yeah.
surgeries for the cancer. The navel's long gone.
That's a great metaphor.
It
you
really
can't
is.
even look
You
at your
can't
own
navel
navel.
gaze.
No.
Wow. I didn't know what was going to come out in this conversation, but that's not one of the things I expected, I'll tell you.
Too
Well-
much information.
Well, and to link that to the book, they talk about how that is actually like too much navel gazing, too much focus on self.
Yes.
Is it what's the word? It imprisons us,
Yes.
and we can't see beyond and reach out.
And our focus, putting our focus on others is so important. But what I'm saying about the navel gazing, I guess, is that would be a term that some would use.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that what I hear from all of you is that processing our own feelings and some of those obstacles to joy, like anger, fear, hurt, and as you say, memories that become little voices in our head sometimes. Processing those and moving through them is how we come out into a more joyful place.
Yes.
But without going through that kind of dark tunnel or dark night of the soul and really looking at our own shadow or whatever you want to call it, without really seeing ourselves fully, we can't live fully in joy.
Not in this kind of joy. You know, the pleasure of external things will always be there, but I guess that's the question we ask ourselves. How do we want to live? What kind of joy do we want to experience?
And I think it's important to emphasize that many people cannot do this alone. It requires relationships and community and vulnerability and the courage to speak your pain and the wisdom of others to enfold you in that love. There are some conditions. It is impossible for you to access your joy and be the captain of your ship constantly. It always is done in community.
Absolutely.
They spoke of solitary confinement as the cruelest of punishments because it robs you of the essential thing that makes us human. Unbuto is a word that constantly comes up.
People are people through others, right?
I
That's
love that.
Oh, that's
I remember in my studies, I came across a philosopher named Eugene Rosenstock-Huessy and Martin Buber, and they talked about how this whole paradigm, I think, therefore I am my own person, is so false. And they said, the truth is, I respond, therefore I change. I am who I am through my relationships. Ancient African wisdom, Ubuntu, right? And if you are not in community in many of the cultures, your personhood is gone.
Yeah.
You're a tree falling in the forest
Yeah.
with no one around to hear
Yeah.
it.
So I hope that anyone watching this, if you scoff at this because we don't appreciate the pain, that you're going through, I want to emphasize it's very difficult to do alone. The prisoner who was in 30 years in solitary, I mean, the man is
A saint.
a saint that he was able to do that.
And he helped others in the prison.
He was what the Buddhists call a bodhisattva, a warrior of compassion. How?
Yeah. Beautiful.
Wow.
Beautiful. But you could see how rich his life became because of that choice he made.
Yeah.
He made a choice.
Yes. Yeah.
He had all the rights in the world to not make that choice. He was in the right,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he chose love instead of being right. He knew he was right, but because he was innocent.
He chose love.
He chose love.
He chose
It's
love.
like,
Beautiful.
if I'm right for the rest of my time here, that's not going to serve me. So yeah.
So, final thoughts about the book? If you were going to recommend it to someone, what would you say? What would be your elevator pitch for this book?
I think because I'm a writer, I would say it's really well written. It really is. I'm very admiring of his skill, but it's very inspiring and motivating. And there's so many little pieces, isn't there, that you can take and incorporate into your life easily, like today.
Yeah.
And I loved it for that reason, and many others.
You'll keep
too.
going back to it, won't you?
I will.
Yeah.
I will.
Me too.
And thank you for suggesting this book, because I would probably not have found it without you.
I would not have
Yeah.
found it either, and I would not have picked it up. It's not the kind of book I usually pick up, and the timing, that you asked us to read it at this time was perfect. And I would say to the people who are listening, if you feel like having a balm on your heart, like a beautiful warm balm of gentleness and fuzziness and goodness, that's what that book did for me. It just warmed my heart. It made me feel very peaceful.
Yeah.
And accompanied.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Your joy is your sorrow unmasked. And the self-same thing that carves a well into your soul will be filled with your tears and also with your joy, right? Cahill Gibran talked about this in the same way.
Yeah.
Selling this book or recommending this book, we don't come into this world with a user's manual. Well, this is a good one.
Yeah, you're so right.
Oh, you're right. I
start.
like that.
Yeah.
It's a
It is.
blueprint. It's a good blueprint.
It's a good blueprint.
I don't know anyone who wouldn't benefit from
Yeah.
reading it and
Absolutely.
understanding the concepts and just, I mean, it's really just, for me, it's like a touchstone I can keep going back and going, oh yeah, right. And it's about remembering.
Yeah.
So I am very happy that you all have been here on my birthday to talk about this book. That's happiness. But I am joyful that you are in my lives and my lives, maybe, you know what?
Yes.
Maybe. That you are in my current life at least. and that I can call you a friend. So that gives me joy. Happiness and joy, all wrapped into one little soul booth.
Oh,
Here's the
you,
joy.
Liz.
So
thank you.
thank you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
And to
Great.
joy.
Watch this on
That's
your
great.
birthday. And do you want to say stay tuned with me? On 3.
Oh, sure.
1, 2, 3.
Stay tuned.
Is there cake?
You know what?